Good evening. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Okon, and thank you for supporting my channel. We are a small and growing channel. We are 10 months into this program. We created our YouTube channel in 2012, but we started work only recently, 10 months ago. And please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thank you for those who have been supporting me, those who have subscribed to this channel, and particularly those who have been sharing with family and friends, those who have been participating in different ways. And we are making the move. We are talking about the cost of living crisis, which is a global phenomenon, is affecting the globe, and we are looking at Africa at the moment. We are looking at Africa, different segments of society, of the continent of Africa, different issues. Today we will be looking at the health condition of Africa, the cost of living. If you watch this video, please watch it with the rest of the video on Africa. Perhaps also the different elements. If you have the time, watch all the videos are posted for it to make a more holistic sense. And Africa suffers more than any other continent in the world because of the cost of living crisis. And the else, we're looking at the prevalence of HIV and AIDS. For example, in Africa, we are looking at the general totals of the people's population ages between 15 and 49 in 2011 World Bank report. For example, we're going through to see what has been happening, because these are also factors pertaining to how Africa fare within the globe. And we're looking at these figures between over 15%, between 5 and 15%, and 2 and 5%, 1 and 2%, and so on. So we are looking at more than 85% of individuals in Africa use traditional medicine as an alternative to often expensive allopathic medical health care and costly pharmaceutical products. The Organization of African Unity, OAU, aids of state and government declared the 2000 decades as the African Decade on African Traditional Medicine in an effort to promote the World Health Organization African region the World Health Organization African regions adopted a resolution for institutionalizing traditional medicine in the healthcare system across the continent. Now, the logic of the world may be one way or the other about one medicine or another. All I know is that before modern science, traditionalists, healers used to use herbs and mixing them within certain formulations, mixing them with formulas, traditional formulas to treat almost any diseases. But we also know that HIV/AIDS needs to be researched, because people give medication for any ailment even before proper diagnosis, which is good, because food itself is a source of medicine, but also natural herbs is a source of medicine. So this is a good approach if the government is interested in Africa, or the governments in Africa or across the globe, what they need to do to reduce the cost of living crisis and other crises, actually to get Africans out of poverty. And government should intervene with rationalizing the economy, because capitalism, if not moderated by the provision of public service, effective provision of public service, is going to be a very dangerous thing to Africa, and not only Africa but also to the rest of the world. I have said it elsewhere that the capitalism is the cause of the cost of living as the crisis, because capitalism as practiced today in every country, in every continent, is extreme, and it is designed now to give more wealth to people who are already very wealthy, and to take away wealth from people who are already very poor. And this is dysfunctional, and it is wrong, and it is a failure of culture. And to redress that, people should need to understand the value of culture, which is actually valuing humanity, setting humanity as a priority. And I'll say this again before I'm saying it again, and we need to really pay attention to this. If we have a problem, it is our responsibility to solve such a problem. A lot of the time now, people think the government should solve the problem. If the government is going to solve your problem, that is okay. But if the government do not, then you need to solve your own problem. And because it is your life, if you die of poverty, if you die of anything, because poverty encompassing food, energy, health care, if your children cannot go to school, if you cannot go to school or obtain training, if you can't find work, and if you find work, it is not paid well, the condition of work is also abusive, is slave-like, and that is not good. That is actually poverty. It actually affects all aspects of life, because income is extremely important in modern economy. You need money, you need wealth to get whatever you need or whatever you want. So people need to pay attention to this. You need to understand the situation. You need to know whether or not you are actually suffering from poverty, and if you are having poverty, it means you work for a living. Normally people get credit. Credit is a bad thing because it's used to confuse people, is shadowy, and it needs to really change or stop altogether. Because if people are getting credit, and this credit system is unsustainable, and it's a trap, you become a prisoner to the creditor, then it's evil, it's wrong, it should not be promoted. Should be stopped, especially on poor and vulnerable people. We saw the credit crunch in America previously. That's what created the world global finance, which actually is part of the cost of living crisis. But today we are talking about the problems in Africa, and how Africa is contributing to the problems of the world, but also how potentially Africa could contribute to the solution of the world, should solving the problem of the world. All we need to do is to change the way we do things. We need to actually examine our system of values. We are valuing humanity first, and other things follows. We value wealth, we value capitalism, we value the market economy. But the market economy do not really help people who cannot help themselves. People who are trapped in poverty because of the system, and this should change by the government producing new policy to strengthen the public sector by nationalizing public service. Every public service should be nationalized. None of the public service should be really privatized, because privatization creates more problem for people who are poor. It's only there to create wealth for the super rich. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And capitalism, under the marketized version, under the commercialized version, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that people who are trapped in poverty cannot compete in the market. So that is why the government in Africa should increase the size of the public sector by nationalizing the economy in relation to food, energy, medicine, housing, employment, benefits like pension, state pension, and other forms of pension should also be introduced in Africa. Because a lot of people are not formally employed in Africa. When they retire, they fall into poverty straight away. Even worse than when they were still able to maybe work in some one way or the other. And if my understanding is correct, in most of African countries, we do not really pay pension to people who don't work for the state. That is entirely wrong. We don't need any funny insurance system or even any credit system where we actually give money in Africa to people who do not even have property. And then they are stuck. We don't even give them enough. We don't train them how to invest. Things like microfinance in Africa should stop. If it means Africa should be relying on loan or anything on credit. If the world or the developed world want microfinance, then microfinance should be grants. If people get it, and people should be trained how to invest it in small and medium businesses in Africa, and this should be by way of priority. And no credit system should operate in Africa, because Africa cannot repay. The government of Africa can no longer repay their debts. How about people who are poor, people who are not even wearing shoes. Some of them even struggle to wear clothing, let alone food and energy and housing and water and things like that. These are real in Africa. Africa is the poverty in Africa is such as not seen anywhere else, and also the affluence among the rich in Africa is such as not even experienced anywhere in the world. In other words, if you go to Africa, you're going to find people who are so poor, and also people who are very rich. And this is actually why Africa is now the cancer in the world. We need it to change. We need to heal Africa so that the world can be healed. We hurt Africa, the world will hurt with Africa, and that is not the way to protect our environment. Our environment, our sense of environment, first of all, should be humanitarian. We should look after humans first, as by way of valuing them, respecting them, and taking care of people who cannot take care of them, who are the 90%, 95% of the population who languishes in poverty, as opposed to the few who are actually multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. And let us go back and look at this information. More than 85% of individuals in Africa use traditional medicine as an alternative to often expensive allopathic medical health care and costly pharmaceutical products. If Africa chooses to use other products rather than the formal product, like formal medicine, which are actually scientifically produced and also scientifically targeted on diseases, if they use it by way of choice, it has to be proven that these are healthy. And with corruption rampaging in Africa, that is a very risky strategy for Africa. Africa is not cultural or innocent people. They are very educated in good ways and in bad ways as well. Those who are developmentally educated, who are actually developmentally inclined, are very good at what they do as experts of development. But also, we have the same problem in Africa as we do elsewhere in the world of cultural failure, cultural proficiency, where people are poorly educated culturally in failing to value humanity, failing to provide respect. In my view, as I was expressing here and elsewhere, is that Africa needs the cultural educating in order to bring peace, and peace bring happiness, and extending our lives to securing our existence in the world. And that's why we're looking at these things to look at it more critically. The Organization of African Unity, OAU, heads of state and government declared the 2000s decade as the African decade on African traditional medicine in an effort to promote the World Health Organization. African regions adopted a resolution for institutionalizing traditional medicine in healthcare systems across the continent. This should be an option with a sense of viability, and like I said before, we are looking at poverty more than anything else, because without means to accessing these helps, it is futile even to talk about them. Because one thing we need to correct at the outset is not really jumping into doing things here and there. We need to really correct the condition of poverty, which is actually created deliberately by the system of capitalism, and we need to correct that now. We need to make sure we get Africans out of poverty, and this is the same message for the rest of the continent. We need to get everybody from every continent out of poverty, and we need to do it now. So like we were looking at, the World Health Organization's African regions adopted a resolution for institutionalizing traditional medicine in healthcare and the system across the continent. The public policymakers in the region are challenged with consideration of the importance of traditional indigenous health system, and whether the traditional indigenous health system and whether their coexistence with the modern medical and health subsector would improve the equitability and accessibility of healthcare distribution, the health status of the population, and the socio-economic development of nations within Sub-Saharan Africa. AIDS in post-colonial Africa is a prevalent issue. Although the continent is home to about 15.2% of the world population, more than 2/3 of the total infected worldwide, some 35 million people were Africans, of whom 15 million have already died. The Sub-Saharan Africa alone accounted for an estimated 69% of all people living with HIV and 7% of all AIDS deaths in 2011. In the countries of Sub-Saharan Africa, most affected AIDS has raised death rates and lowered life expectancy among adults between the ages of 20 and 49 by about 20 years. Furthermore, the life expectancy in many parts of Africa has declined largely as a result of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, with life expectancy in some countries reaching as low as 34 years. We are going to look at the culture of Africa. And the culture of Africa is how people live. The land, the landscape, system of worship looks at the Gambian stone circles lying in the Gambian Senegal, and Senegal are the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So some cultural sites, some aspects of traditional African cultures have become less practiced in recent years as a result of neglect and suppression by colonial post-colonial regimes. For example, African customs were discouraged and African languages were prohibited in mission schools. Leopold II of Belgium attempted to civilize Africans by discouraging polygamy and witchcraft. Obido Freeborn posits that colonialism is one element that has created the character of modern African art. According to authors Douglas Fraser and Herbert M. Cole, the precipitous alteration in the power structure wrought by colonialism were quickly followed by drastic iconographic changes in the art. Fraser and Cole assert that in Igbo land, some hard objects lack the vigor and careful craftsmanship of the earlier hard objects that serve traditional functions. Author Chika Okeke Agulu state that the racist infrastructure of British imperial enterprise forced upon the political and cultural guardians of the empire the denial and suppression of an emerging sovereign Africa and modernist art. Editors F. Abiola Arili and Simone Gekandi comment that the current identity of African literature has its genesis in the traumatic encounter between Africa and Europe. On the other hand, Mose Shikowero believes that Africans deployed music, dance, spirituality, and other informative cultures to reassert themselves as active agents and indigenous intellectuals to unmake their colonial marginalization and reshape their own destinies. There is now a resurgence in the attempts to rediscover and revalue African traditional cultures under such movements as the African Renaissance, led by Thabo Mbeki, Afrocentrism, led by a group of scholars including Molefi Asante, as well as the increasing recognition of traditional spiritualism through the decriminalization of voodoo and other forms of spirituality. As of March 2023, 93 African properties are listed as by UNESCO as World Heritage Sites. Among these properties, 54 are cultural sites, 39 are natural sites, and 5 are mixed sites. The list of World Heritage in danger include 15 African sites. So look at things like virtual heart. So you look at figures like the Nook figure, the 5th century BCE, 5th century CE. These paragraphs are in the excerpt from the African heart. African art described the modern and historical painting sculptures, installation and other visual culture from native and indigenous Africans and the African continent. The definition may also include the art of the African diasporas, such as African American, Caribbean, or art in South American societies inspired by African traditions. Despite this diversity, there are unified artistic themes present when considering the totality of the visual culture from the continent of Africa. Pottery, metalwork, sculpture, architecture, textile art, fiber art are important visual art forms across Africa and may be included in the study of African art. The term African art does not usually include the art of the North African areas along the Mediterranean coast, such areas such areas have long been part of different traditions. For more than a millennium, the art of such areas had formed part of Berber or Islamic art, although with many particular local characteristics. The art of Ethiopia, with a long Christian tradition, is also different from that of most of Africa, where the traditional African religion with Islam in the north was dominant until the 20th century. Many African cultures were historically made of wood and other natural materials that have not survived from other than a few centuries ago, and although rare older pottery and metal figures can be found in some areas. Some of the earliest decorative objects, such as shell beads and evidence of paints, have been discovered in Africa dating to the Middle Stone Age. Masks are important elements in the heart of many peoples along with human figures, and are often highly stylized. Masks, there is a vast majority of styles, often varying within the same context of origin and deepening on the use of the object, but wide regional trends are apparent. Culture is most common among groups of settled cultivators in the areas drained by Niger and Congo rivers in West Africa. Direct images of deities are relatively infrequent, but masks in particular are and were often made for ritual ceremonies. So there is a mixing of artistry and religion, culture and faith. And since the late 19th century, there has been an increasing amount of African art in Western collections, the finest pieces of which are displayed as part of the history of colonialism. So as we can see, even African culture and method of a way of life like artistry, music and so forth have been affected by the history of Africa, including the history of colonialism. So since the late 19th century, there has been an increased amount of African art in the Western collection, the finest pieces of which are displayed as part of the history of colonialism. The West, actually, like in Europe, like in America, have been taking a lot of valuable art. The way they take it is another story. Whether it's stolen or just taken in some ways which are inappropriate. These are actually wealthy artifacts of Africa. The taking of any aspect of wealth from Africa is the cause of living. In the first place, it's a crisis, but also poverty and a lot of problems. African art has had an important influence on the European modernist art, which was inspired by the interest in abstract depiction. It was this appreciation of African sculptures that has been attributed to the very concept of African art as seen by European and American artists and art historians. West African cultures developed bronze casting for reliefs like the famous Benin bronzes to decorate palaces and for highly naturalistic royal heads from around the Benin town of Benin City, Edo State, as well as the terracotta and metal from the 12th, between the 12th and the 14th centuries. Akan gold weights are a form of small metal sculptures produced over the period of between 1400 and 1900. Some are apparently represent proverbs, contributing a narrative element. Rare in the African culture, and royal regalia included impressive gold sculptured elements. Many West African figures are used in religious rituals and are often coated with materials placed on them for ceremonial offerings. Many West African figures are used in religious rituals and are often coated with minerals placed on them for ceremonial offerings. The Mande-speaking people of the same region make pieces from wood and with broad and flat surfaces and arms and legs shaped like cylinders. Vivid description of African artistry and reflecting how Africa as humanity can be able to express their context as humans to be valued within their African perspective and not really subjected to any colonial or imperialistic attitude or even interventions. So we are looking at Africa. In Central Africa, however, the main distinguishing characteristics include heart-shaped faces that are curved inward and display patterns of circles and dots. So let us look at agriculture in Africa. So we look at architecture in Africa. So we are looking at monuments such as cultural or even political or religious monuments like the pyramids of Giza are regarded as one of the greatest architectural feats of all time in one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Africa is a continent to be proud of. Remarkable feats have taken place in history, and potentially Africa can lead the globe in all spheres of existence. Architecture is the leading infrastructure of global development and global culture. Like other aspects of the culture of Africa, the architecture of Africa is exceptionally diverse. Throughout the history of Africa, Africans have developed their own local architectural traditions. In some cases, broader regional styles can be identified, such as the Sahelian architecture of West Africa. A common theme in the traditional African architecture is the use of fractal scaling. A small part of the structure tend to look similar to larger parts, such as a circular village made of circular houses. African architecture in some areas have been influenced by external cultures for centuries, according to available evidence. So the wealth of Africa is that they maintain authenticity, they maintain their tradition, but they are also open to ideas from those who come them, especially those who will visit Africa for purposes of business, trade, industry, art, culture, customs, as long as they do it peacefully. But my purpose in this material is that normally people go to Africa and focus on the weakness which is left by lack of development in Africa, and also abuse therefore Africa within the developmental front. Africa struggle to compete in the modern market economy, and these has left the majority of the population poor and suffering more the cost of living crisis. And that is our reference point throughout any information we handle today. We are trying to re-examine these conditions in terms of why Africa is poor, in terms of why it suffers more than anybody else as in the suffering or involved in the cost of living crisis. So African architecture in some areas has been influenced by external forces. Western architecture has influenced coastal areas since the late 15th century and is now an important source of inspiration for many larger buildings, particularly in major cities. African architecture uses a wide range of materials including thatch, stick, wood, mud brick, rammed earth, and stone. These material preferences vary by region. North Africa for stone and rammed earth, and the Horn of Africa for stone and mortar. West Africa for mud, adobe, and Central Africa for thatched wood and more perishable materials. Southeast and Southern Africa for stone and thatched roof. Let us look at things like the cinema. This section is an excerpt from the Cinema of Africa. Cinematic street poster in Tunisia for the Egyptian film Saladin the Victorious 1963 Arabic. Al-Nasser Salah ad-Din had ad-Din directed by Youssef Shaheen, starring Ahmed Mazar as Saladin, Zulfikar, Nadia Lufti, and others. Cinema of Africa covers both the history and present of the making or screening of films on the African continent, and also refers to the persons involved in this form of audiovisual culture. It dates back to the early 20th century when film reels were the primary cinematic technology in use. And during the colonial era, African life was shown only by the work of white colonial Western filmmakers who depicted African in a negative fashion as exotic others. So Africans were portrayed like anything but Africans by foreigners. Is an attitude of colonialism, colonial imperialism, and that is actually part of the poverty in Africa, part of the disadvantage of Africa. Africa disrespected culturally and developmentally as well, and the suffering in Africa is terrible. That Africa has the capacity to smile, has Africa capacity to dance, to do films, to do movies, to do art. Africa has not given up hope. Africa is resilient, and they have always defied logic. They defied the intention of people who have been brutal to victimize Africa, and I believe Africans are responsible for their lives. Africa can sit there and feel sorry for itself and blame everybody else, blame the foreigners for their troubles. But I say to Africa that rise up and stand up for your freedom. And we have to respect yourself, Africans, as Africans, value your lives as Africans, and also value the life of people who are not Africans around the world, because they are also humans, and with a humanitarian aspect of self-respect, of respecting others and their property and your property, to value your life and to value your wealth, whether they are art, cinema, or whatever they are. This information is important, and it has to go out. And people watching this video, please subscribe to this channel and support it in whatever way you can. Subscribe and share with family and friends. Leave a comment below. Hit a notification bell and click like. Thank you for your support. Those who have been supporting me. So we are looking at Africa, and there are artistry, including cinema as an industry. And so it dates back to the early 20th century, when film reels were the primary cinematic technology in use during the colonial era. And as there are more than 50 countries with the audiovisual tradition, there is no one single African cinema. Both historically and culturally, there are more regional differences between North Africa and Sub-Saharan cinemas, and between the cinemas of different countries. So Africa, in that respect, is distinctively Africa, and I think that is a source of pride. And we need to focus on our strength, on our difference, and provide the capability of doing so. But with the failure of the state, because things like creative industries need a lot of support often in Africa by the state. And that's what I'm really trying to say, that the policy on the market economic system needs to be moderated by an act of government to internationalize the economy in favor of the many and not the few. The cinema of Tunisia and the cinema of Egypt are among the oldest in the world. Pioneers Auguste and Louis Lumiere screened their films in Alexandria, Cairo, Tunis, Susa, Libya, and Amman, Tunisia in 1896. Albert Samamba Shikli is often cited as the first producer of indigenous African cinema, screening his own short documentaries in the Casino of Tunis as early as December 1905. Alongside his daughter Heidi Tamzali, Shikli would go on to produce important early milestones, such as 1924's The Girl from Carthage. The Girl from Carthage. In 1935, the MISR Film Studio in Cairo began producing mostly formulaic comedies and musicals, but also films like Kamal Salim's The Wheel, 1939. Egyptian cinema flourished in the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, and considered its golden age. Youssef Shahin's seminal Cairo Station 1955 laid the foundation of Arab films. Let us look at music in Africa. A musician from South Africa. This section is on excerpt from Music of Africa. Given the vastness of Africa, African continent, its music is diverse, and with regions and nations having many distinct musical traditions. African music includes the genre Amapiano, Juju, Fuji, Afrobeat, Highlife, Makossa, Kizomba, and others. African music also uses a large variety of instruments across the continent. The music and dances of the African diaspora form to varying degrees on African musical tradition, include American music like Dixieland, jazz, blues, jazz, and many Caribbean genres such as calypso, calypso, and soca. Latin American music genres such as the cumbia, salsa music, cubano, rumba, conga, bomba, samba, and zouk were founded on the music of enslaved Africans and have in turn influenced African popular music. Like the music of Asia, India, and the Middle East is a highly rhythmic music. The complex rhythmic patterns often involving one of the rhythm played against another to create a polyrhythm. The most common polyrhythm plays 3 beats on top of 2, like a triplet played against straight notes. In sub-Saharan African music traditions frequently rely on percussion instruments of many varieties, including xylophone, djembe, djembes, drums, and turn-producing instruments such as the mbira or the thumb piano. Let us look at African dances, and this section is an excerpt from the African dance. African dance refers to the various dance styles of Sub-Saharan Africa. These dances are closely connected with the traditional rhythms and music tradition of the region. Music and dancing is an integral part of many traditional African societies. When you dance, when you play, when you sing, you dance your sorrows away, as well as you celebrate your wealth, your richness, and your society, your humanity. And this is also consistent with else living in Africa. Africa can contribute for the happiness of the world, for the joy of the world, for the wealth of the world. And that's why Africa is extremely important. If we talk about the cost of living as a crisis, it affects everything. That's why we are looking at everything in a holistic way in Africa and linking everything to the cost of living crisis, because it is so important. Without getting out of poverty, Africa will risk losing its humanity, will risk losing its development, will risk losing its artistry and everything we live for, to bring peace and happiness and joy in our world. So music and dancing is an integral part of many traditional African societies. Songs and dances facilitate teaching and promoting social values, celebrating special events and major life milestones, performing oral history and other traditional recitations, spiritual experiences. So the function of music is multifaceted. So music in Africa, African music is really a respectable contribution to the global community, and African dance utilizes the concept of polyrhythm and the concept of polyrhythm and total body articulation. African dances are a collective activity performed in large groups with a significant interaction between dancers and onlookers in the majority of times. So let's look at sports in Africa. So best result of African men's national football team at the FIFA World Cup. 54 African countries have football teams in the Confederation of African Football. Egypt has won the African Cup 7 times and a record-making 3 times in a row. Cameroon, Nigeria, Morocco, Senegal, Ghana, and Algeria have advanced to the knockout stages of recent FIFA World Cups. Morocco made history at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar and the first African nation to reach the semi-finals of the FIFA Men's World Cup. South Africa hosted the 2010 World Cup and tournament, becoming the first African country to do so. The top clubs in each African Football League play the CAF Champions League, while lower-ranked clubs compete in CAF Confederation Cup. In recent years, the continent has made major progress in terms of state-of-the-art basketball facilities, which have been built in the cities of as diverse as Cairo, Dakar, Johannesburg, Kigali, Luanda, and the roads and the roads. And this is to show how capable Africa is, left to its own devices to chart its own course in the world, and working within itself and also without itself. Africa is potentially can be self-reliant, and we just need a bit of peace, a bit more peace in the continent, in order to do our own things and also do things with the rest of the world. And we are talking about Africa in relation to the cost of living, in case you're forgetting, while you enjoy the artifacts and the wealth of Africa, including in sports. The number of African basketball players who drafted into the NBA has experienced major growth in the 2010s. This is a good report on Africa and a cause for celebration for every African and also for every member of the global community. And we are continuing to look at Africa and to celebrate Africa in spite of its sometimes unspeakable state of misery. The cricket is popular. Cricket is popular in some African nations. South Africa and Zimbabwe have test status, while Kenya is the leading non-test team and previously had one-day international cricket ODI status from the 10th of October 1997 until the 30th of January 2014. The three countries jointly hosted the 2003 Cricket World Cup. Namibia is the other African country to have played in the World Cup. Morocco in Northern Africa has also hosted the 2002 Morocco Cup, but the national team has never qualified for a major tournament. The rugby is popular in several Southern African nations. Namibia and Zimbabwe both have appeared on multiple occasions at the Rugby World Cup, while South Africa is the joint most successful national team alongside New Zealand at the Rugby World Cup, having won the tournament on 3 occasions in 1995, 2007, and 2019. Let us look at territories and regions of Africa. And look list of sovereign states and dependencies, dependent territories in Africa, and we are looking at the continent: Algeria, Togo, Benin, Botswana, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Djibouti, Egypt, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Cape Verde, Libya, Mali, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, Morocco, Sao Tome and Principe, Gabon, Namibia, Niger, Nigeria, Congo, Somalia, Somaliland, South Africa, Sudan, South Sudan, Tunisia, Western Sahara, Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Kenya, Liberia, Madagascar, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, Angola, St. Helena, UK, Lesotho, Eswatini, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mauritius, Reunion, Comoros, Seychelles, Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean, Strait of Gibraltar, the Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea. The countries in this table are categorized according to the scheme for geographical sub-regions used by the United Nations. The data included sources in cross-reference articles where they differ previously clearly indicated. Thank you for watching this video. And that is Africa. From the people of Africa, we look at the people of Africa, we look at how resilient they are, we look at how resourceful African people are, we look at how African people relate positively with the rest of the world, and also on the natural resources of Africa. And we look at the geography, we look at the rules, the governments, politics, we look at everything in Africa, and we are happy with Africa as a member of the global community, the second biggest country, the second most populous, potentially the most richest in the world, with potential fresh waters under the earth, in rivers and lakes. But also I have said about water that the world, the modern world especially, can now do what Israel is trying to do, to desalinate. Actually, African, the sea waters is salted, so desalination is actually taking away the salt from the sea water and making it fresh for drinking, for cooking, and for irrigating the land. You see, the world is full of resources. Africa is at the heart of the global infrastructure, the global community, and the cost of living is not necessary, and the governments of the world should change their economic policy on the public services. They should not shut it down. They should actually improve and increase it, because we need the public sector from now on going forward until we achieve technological age, when the economy shuts down naturally, because it's shutting down not naturally when technology matures, because technology is destined to produce goods and services for no extra cost. If there's no extra cost in production, then the products, goods and services will be produced and distributed for free, because nobody will need nobody will need wealth, nobody will need money, nobody will need anything, because everybody will be able to access wealth because of technology. There is hope for Africa. There's hope for the rest of the earth, and so we should be excited about our life, in this life and in the life to come. And with technology, I've said it previously, that humanity are capable of doing anything, including, like I said in the other videos, scientists are now working to do a study on aging, on slowing down aging, on actually stopping aging altogether, or reversing even aging. Aging is the single biggest killer of humanity, and if we can stop it, if we can reverse it, and people are working on that now scientifically in terms of medicine, that is exciting. It's good news for us, and if we can do that, and we will do that, I know, and we also manages to maybe bring the dead back to life, which we are also able to do that, because we are advancing our knowledge of genes, of information, understanding how it works in the human body, in human life, in life itself, looking at life sciences and things like that, biology, DNA, and all these studies. I believe that one day we will find means of bringing dead people back to life, so that our loved one who died decades ago can be reunited. It's like talking about scientific paradise on earth. And I'm a Christian, and for those Christians who may think that I'm despising God, I am not, because humanity, God loves people. He created us in His own image, and God is a creator. So if we create anything on earth, we are not really fighting God. We are actually complementing God. But the only thing, whatever we do, even we bring the dead back from the dead, in the physical sense of the word, we need to learn our culture now. Because whatever we do, whether it is a good thing, or whether it is a wonderful thing, it's going to be weaponized if we don't learn our culture properly, if we don't learn peace. Learning culture is learning peace, because we begin to value humanity, we begin to respect one another. And I hope with this video, with this modest step, we will start making baby steps toward reclaiming our humanity, reclaiming our world, reinstating the pathways to peace, prosperity, and happiness. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to my channel, watch the entire video, and share with family and friends. Click the notification bell, click like, and leave a comment below. Thank you. See you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.